Hi guys, I'm Li Hui, your host for this podcast. You are listening to the Just Little Things in Life podcast. Today's episode is going to be a book review episode. It's my second book review, and today I'm going to review a book called The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. So let's dive deep into this book, okay? The first few chapters of this book to me was quite confusing. I couldn't understand why the author was narrating a very sad life of a person. I remember when I was reading the sad life of this protagonist, I was wondering, is this the content of the book? It's boring. And I'm going to quit reading it if it continues for a few more chapters. But before I continue with the remaining part of the story, let's talk about how sad is the life of Nora Seed, who is the protagonist of this story. Okay, so she lost her job, her cat died, she had a bad relationship with her brother, Joe, and her friend, Razi. Her life was hopeless and she was going to commit suicide in the midnight. Then the clock reached 000000, which is 12 a.m., 00 seconds. She committed suicide and the time stopped. Yeah, the story starts. Okay, so quite like a cliche story, right? The time stopped and after all those mystical things happened. But anyway, this is how the story goes. Then she arrived at the Midnight Library. The Midnight Library is not heaven nor hell. It's a place that sits between life and death. In the library, there were infinite choices, endless possibilities that they are actually all alternative pathways that branched out from every decision you make in your life. So, for example, in your road life, you choose to stay up late to study for exams, then in the morning you woke up late and failed to arrive at the exam center on time. But fortunately, you still managed to finish the paper. Then you go back home, and you took an afternoon nap. So the whole thing seems perfectly fine. Okay, right? There's no weird thing happening here. But what if? What if in another life you did not stay up late for exams? Then you arrive at the exam center on time, but unfortunately, even though you are really prepared for the exam, you forgot to bring a calculator. So you failed the exam and your day was so bad that instead of going home, you went to sing karaoke. As you can see, there are many decisions involved in the previous example that I gave. Like, do you want to stay up late or do you choose not to? Would you choose to go back home or would you choose to go to sing karaoke? So there are basically so many decisions made in the story, and because there are so many decisions involved, you have infinite possibilities, infinite alternatives. Yeah, so that's basically the main storyline of this book. So Nora, in the Midnight Library, she met her old school librarian, Mrs. Elms. The school librarian guided her to experience her alternative lives and led her to find a purpose of living. So basically, Nora's life was full of regrets, like 100% regrets. So although Nora had lost hope and was a failure in her own life, but in her alternative lives, she was an Olympic swimmer, a rock star with millions of followers, and she was working at a dog shelter, a mom of future child called Molly, and a wife of Ash. She was even a glaciologist. So she lived a lot of lives, and she experienced each of the alternatives' life with the help of Mrs. Elms. Wow, it's pretty interesting, right? Like you can switch between lives and experience them, just like Nora. Nora can experience to be an Olympic swimmer, and the next second she might be experiencing to be a rock star. If I can switch between life, probably I want to try out the life of a rock star. Like I can switch between a celebrity, like a famous singer, probably Taylor Swift at one moment, and the next moment I might be an activist that advocate for human rights and care for nature. So yeah, it's pretty interesting here, I think. But what if things don't go so well down the road? Would you want to go back to your road life and continue with a road life even though your road life is boring? Or would you want to stay in one of those alternatives and keep things going there? Yeah. So in these alternatives, there were good ones and of course there were bad ones. So, for example, when Nora had a perfect family, a loving husband, and a cute child, she did not become a piano teacher to Joe, a boy, like what she did in her real life, her root life. And because of this, Joe did not have the chance to discover his passion to music, and eventually he became a bad person and he was sent to jail. And except for the example, another example would be when Nora chose a different life where she and her best friend Izzy moved to Australia to see the whales. She thought that this was the life she wants to live when she got the chance to experience that, the alternative lives. But later, she found out that Izzy was involved in a car crash and Izzy died. So yeah, there were good ones and definitely there were also bad alternatives of lives. But like the good ones, Nora regretted for not marrying her fiance. That was actually one of her biggest regrets in her root life. But in her alternative life, Nora did get married with her fiance and they opened a pub. So you can imagine that Nora in her alternative life married her fiance. So Nora actually thought that this was the life she wants. But she never thought of how selfish her fiance was until she saw the situation as the third person. It actually made her realize that her blind love towards her fiance had always hit her in the dark and made her to bear the unnecessary regrets as if a fault. So because of the experience of the alternative life, she finally knew that it was not entirely her fault and her fiance is not like a very good person. So eventually she knows what's going on. I think I actually agree to this part of the story. I mean, sometimes we need to see things in a different perspective to know the situation better, just like how Nora sees her fiance's true self as a third person. I mean, oftentimes we don't give ourselves this opportunity, this third person opportunity, because we thought that we are always right and changing our view or point of view is wrong. Because it might also probably we are the one that are wrong most of the times. So I think it's good to change your point of view when you are having trouble or when you are facing some problems. And at the final part of this story, the library started burning, and before the whole thing collapsed and was burned to ashes, Nora wrote down a significant line in a book. I am alive. After all the lives she had experienced, she found a purpose. She wanted to be alive. She did not want to die anymore. Then she was back to her root life. So this book is not telling us to appreciate our life, but telling us that the life we are living right now belongs to us and we only get one chance to live it. Like actually in the Midnight Library, although Nora has so many options to choose, so many lives to live, but Nora can only experience each alternative life once. So yeah, you only get to live your life once. Although Nora was back to her root life, her life did not change at all. Her cat was still dead, she was still jobless, but the only thing that changed was that she was living for herself right now, not for other people or their expectations, and she is alive. I think Nora's life is basically our life. We often find ourselves caught in the middle of something, usually bad events, and we are always struggling, choking to death, and trying to survive at the same time. But these are the times when we regret the most. We regret our life choices and we would think, will it be different if I have chosen a different pathway? What if I chose to not pursue my dream to be a singer, but follow the majority and go to get a business degree? We wish that we have chosen a different path and we hope that something better will happen in the different path you choose. You want it better. We want it better. We want things to get better. In the book, Mrs. Elms, the librarian, said a phrase, want. Is a special word. It means lack. We are privileged to feel that we lack something and we are also privileged to want for better things. But sometimes we forget that we actually have everything we need and that's enough already. So there are so many what ifs and wants that make us doubt our choices, question our sanity, and ultimately leads to depression and mental health problems. When Nora gets the chance to dip into her other variations of her life, she was definitely fortunate to get this opportunity. Like, who else can arrive in the Midnight Library after you commit suicide? I don't think we see a real life example before, right? So I don't think that we have this chance. Or if we have, probably parallel universe or multiverse actually exist. But since that we are not sure about the answer, why not we don't dwell on this uncertainty, but do our best and live our life, I would say. So there will be regrets along the way, and there will certainly be regrets waiting for you at your next life choice, even though it's just as simple as choosing what to eat for breakfast. If you sometimes chose the wrong thing to eat and you have an allergic reaction, food poisoning, that there are regrets too, right? But regrets are sometimes beautiful. You will not be stuck at these regrets forever. Instead, most of us move on before we know, and it's better that we learn from these regrets instead of dwelling in them. So, I want to recommend The Midnight Library by Matt Haig to all of our listeners. The Midnight Library is a simple to read and easy to understand book. It has little characters. There's no side story going on, just one main storyline, and the protagonist is always Nora Seeds. So Nora Seeds in the whole book is basically trying out different alternatives of her life. But at the end, she get back to her original life, her root life, and this time she is alive. However, I think that Matt Haig, the author of this novel, addresses a lot of current issues that young adults are experiencing, like depressions, mental health issues, regrets, choices, relationships, and even survival. It was a wholesome reading experience, and a lot of self-reflections have been made after me finishing the whole novel. So I hope that all of you guys will enjoy reading The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And that's all for today. I will see you all at the next episode. Bye bye. Goodbye.